When the CEO messaged me, it felt casual. "Let's catch up over lunch," he said. "Haven't sat down one-on-one in a while." I didn't think much of it. After 18 years in the company, I'd seen my share of check-ins, reorganizations, and private conversations. Lunch wasn't unusual. We used to do this quarterly, back when the business was smaller, when the stakes were real and personal. So I showed up. Same spot we always went, just a few blocks from the office. Corner booth. He was already there, tie loosened, 2 drinks, on the table. He smiled too easily. The kind of smile people wear when they're trying to sell you something they know you won't want to buy. We talked for a few minutes, weather, business, his golf handicap. Then, somewhere between the first sip and the second bite, his tone shifted. "You've done incredible work here," he said, almost rehearsed. "No one questions that." I nodded slowly, already sensing what was coming. "But the company's evolving, and frankly, with your salary, we're at a point where it doesn't align with the new direction." I stared at him for a second, fork mid-air. He took a breath. "We're bringing in fresh leadership, someone who understands the next generation of digital infrastructure." He said fresh like it meant better. Then he waved someone over. A young guy in a too-tight blazer approached the table like he owned it. I recognized the face. He'd been at the last holiday party, always on his phone, always taking credit for things that hadn't happened yet. "This is Max," the CEO said. "He's the owner's nephew. Been shadowing me the last few months." Max shook my hand with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. I didn't say anything. Not during the intro. Not when the CEO outlined my generous transition plan. Not when Max sat down and started asking about department files like he was already in charge. I just sat there and listened. I felt something inside me tighten. But it wasn't anger. It was focus. Because I realized in that exact moment that they thought they were closing a chapter. What they didn't understand was that they'd just started writing a new one. And this time I was holding the pen. I finished my drink, stood up, and thanked them both. Then I walked out. No scene, no words wasted. Just a quiet decision to start. Watching, very, very closely. I joined the company when it was still renting space above a hardware store. No glass doors, no ergonomic chairs, no investor slide decks, just 5 of us with second-hand desks and too much coffee. The CEO back. Then wasn't giving media interviews. He was pulling double shifts with the rest of us, sweating payroll, and hand-coding HTML with me at midnight. I didn't have a fancy title. I didn't want one. What I wanted was to build something real. So I stayed quiet and worked hard. Took on the ugly tasks, documented everything, learned the guts of our systems while others learned how to present. There was a time, year 4 maybe, when the business nearly folded. We lost 2 clients back to back and couldn't make rent. The CEO called me at home, panicked. I wired my own savings to cover a vendor deposit. He paid me back eventually. But that wasn't the point. We were building something that mattered. When the company scaled up, I helped design the infrastructure we still use today. Legacy code, system redundancies, compliance mapping, things that don't get applause at meetings but keep a business running. I built training manuals from scratch, onboarded new engineers, quietly fixed things before anyone noticed they were broken. That includes Max, by the way, the owner's nephew. He interned with us a few summers ago. I remember walking him through the ticketing platform. He nodded like he understood, then spent the next week sending Slack messages about how to reset his password. Nice kid, no grit, no patience for the unglamorous stuff. Still, I trained him. Just like I trained half the team he's probably firing now. The thing is, I never asked for much. No stock options, no awards, just a seat at the table and the chance to keep building. I thought I'd earned that. Turns out, 18 years of loyalty can disappear during lunch. But here's what they don't see. Loyalty goes both ways. And when it breaks on one side, something changes on the other. Max might inherit a title, but he didn't build the foundations. He doesn't know where the wires run, or what happens when you cut the wrong one. I didn't walk away from that. Lunch empty-handed. I walked away with a memory of every system I ever built, and I built a lot. Max came in like he'd discovered fire. Suddenly everything was about modernization, scalability, and reimagining the customer journey. Buzzwords replaced strategy. Slack was full of vague pep talks and bad memes. He hosted Friday alignment sessions where nothing aligned except his ego. To the board, it sounded impressive, fresh energy, a visionary approach, but to those of us who'd actually built the place, it felt like watching someone repaint a house without checking the foundation first. Within a week, the dev team had been reshuffled. 2 senior engineers who'd quietly carried entire product lines were demoted or pushed out. One resigned after Max told him in front of the team, "I need people who think forward, not backward." He brought in his own people, former classmates, influencers, tech bros with flashy resumes and zero staying power. They talked big but panicked when basic systems didn't auto-resolve. One mistook our staging environment for production and deleted hours of live data before someone stepped in. But Max didn't notice the cracks. Or worse, he didn't care. He fired Karen from client success. She'd handled our top accounts for over a decade because she wasn't digitally engaging. That same week, one of our oldest clients called, asking why their usual contact had been replaced by someone who didn't know their billing structure or even pronounce their company. Name right. When Max replied to them on LinkedIn, he misspelled their name in a public post. Still, the board applauded. Charts looked good. There were slides with vibrant gradients and fake engagement metrics. The marketing team posted photos of Max on Zoom calls with hashtags like Next-Gen Leadership and Digital Disruptor. Inside the walls, though, things started. Slipping, turnaround times doubled. Vendors grew irritated. One longtime partner paused all collaboration until the transition settles. Another flat out left, but Max spun it as intentional. "We're cleaning house," he said in a video. Date. Legacy relationships are emotional, not strategic. He used legacy like a curse word. I watched from a distance, not with bitterness but curiosity. He had no idea how deep the roots ran. No clue which systems required manual workarounds or which vendors were loyal because of handshakes made years ago. He didn't even know what he didn't know. They gave him my title, my office, my team, but not my understanding. That wasn't in any folder he inherited, and it never would be. Max walked me out with a smile that didn't match his eyes. "Thanks for everything," he said, like I'd just fetched coffee instead of built the backbone of the company he was now tearing apart. I nodded once. No handshake, no last words. Just the box in my arms and 18 years reduced to a hallway walk and a swipe of my badge. I passed a few old colleagues. Some looked away. A few gave the kind of tight, uncomfortable smiles people wear at funerals. No one said anything. They didn't have to. The day before I'd stayed late, nobody noticed. While they staged transition emails and scheduled my exit interview, I made quiet copies. Vendor contracts, infrastructure notes, version histories. Nothing illegal, nothing stolen. Just things I'd built, documented, maintained. My fingerprints. Preserved. I didn't leave in anger. That's not how you survive long in business. You don't blow the doors off on the way out. You make sure the blueprints walk out with you, and then you wait. As I stepped into the parking lot, I didn't feel grief. I felt ready. They thought I was walking away from the building. What they didn't realize was I was taking the foundation with me. The mistake they made wasn't firing me. It was assuming I'd been an employee. I wasn't. Not in the way Max thought. Over the years, when systems failed and vendors needed hand-holding, when weekend emergencies needed triage, or when onboarding timelines collapsed, I handled it. Not as a clock puncher, but as a fixer. Quietly, efficiently, and without ever asking for applause. What they didn't realize was how many of those temporary fixes had become permanent over time, and how many of those were structured around me personally. Take our automation tools, the ones that kept customer service running 24/7. Those were my Frankenstein creations, built over years, patched with third-party APIs no one else knew how to renew, and the access keys, still tied to my personal dev account. They'd revoke admin access eventually, but not before a few missed cycles. Or the vendor contracts. In year 6, when we lost our procurement lead, I stepped in, negotiated terms, built relationships. Some of our longest-standing partners didn't have formal company contracts. They had handshake deals with me, reinforced, later by minimal paperwork routed through an LLC I used for consulting years ago. That LLC still held master contracts for a handful of tools they use daily, technically legal, definitely inconvenient for them. Then there was the NDA, the one I signed back when the company was still in its infancy, back when we were too small to afford a real lawyer and used a boilerplate template from an online generator. It had a clause, one nobody caught. It expired after 5 years unless actively renewed. It never was, meaning everything I helped create after that point. Architecture, layouts, escalation protocols, incident response logs, was no longer protected under that agreement. Most of it wasn't proprietary by legal standards, but it was valuable. And I knew it better than anyone. Max would eventually find out. Probably during a frantic midnight call when something broke and no one could remember the manual override. Or when a vendor paused service because the invoice still had my name on it and no one had updated the routing preferences. That day would come. But I wasn't rushing it. Power isn't about yelling in the boardroom or demanding credit in a Slack thread. Real power is knowing which wires run under the floor and what happens when someone unplugs the wrong one. So I waited, set up a clean consulting page, reached out to 2 of our vendors, casually, let them know I was available for freelance support if needed. Both responded in under 10 minutes. Then I sat back. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition. But if that wasn't on the table, I'd settle for being missed. And Max? He had no idea just how many things still ran with my name quietly attached. They could remove me from payroll, but they couldn't erase the systems I built, not without them falling apart in the process. I didn't move out of emotion. That's not how you win. I called Rick, a longtime friend and corporate attorney, told him everything, not the anger, not the bruised ego, just the facts. He listened carefully, then asked for documentation. That part was easy. I had years of email threads, policy memos, contract handovers, all of them signed off with my name. I'd never thought of them as ammunition, just receipts of quiet work. Now they formed a clear pattern, ignored warnings, bypassed audits, reckless procurement decisions approved by the new guard. Rick flagged 2 compliance violations immediately, minor, but if paired with recent changes Max made, they looked a lot worse. We opened a file, not a lawsuit, just a paper trail, a roadmap if the board ever wanted to follow it. Meanwhile, I went back through admin systems I still had access to, not to sabotage, but to export logs, usage data, and support tickets that showed where things were headed. Most were already breaking. All I had to do was watch. I didn't leak anything. I didn't post online. I just prepared. Then I sent a short email to the CFO, someone who'd been around since the beginning. I offered to answer any questions she had about the transition. She replied with one line, "What aren't we seeing?" I stared at that question longer than I expected. Then I started writing, not out of vengeance, but because truth, when handled carefully, tends to work like gravity. It pulls everything back into balance. The first crack was subtle, a missed delivery to a key client. They thought it was a shipping error. It wasn't. The automation script that managed fulfillment hadn't been renewed after my account was closed. The credentials expired, and no one caught it. The client, one of our oldest and most loyal, pulled out 2 days later. Quietly. No drama. Just a call from their VP. We're reevaluating partnerships. That alone should have sent alarms ringing. Then came the system outage. Our customer portal, the one I'd patched together with custom API layers, buckled under a version update. Half of their new team didn't even know how to access the root dashboard. For 12 hours, the site was offline. The nephew blamed the vendor. The vendor called me. Meanwhile, I'd been sitting on a quiet collection of internal notes, meetings. The nephew never documented, decisions made without oversight, staff turnover reports with red flags they'd ignored. Nothing salacious, just sloppy. But when shared with the right person on the board, discreetly, it painted a picture of a company drifting off course. Then the press got wind of it. A small article in a niche industry journal. Legacy firm stumbles post-leadership change. No names, no drama. But it made people ask questions, and that was all it took. The illusion of progress cracked. For the first time, people stopped seeing me as the one who left, and started wondering why they let me go in the first place. I didn't have to lift a finger. They did it all themselves. The email came from the board liaison, polite, professional, vague. Would you be open to a conversation regarding temporary advisory support? I almost smiled. They didn't say the nephew had failed or that the systems were falling apart, but they didn't have to. The phrasing alone told me everything. They were desperate, but still too proud to admit it outright. I replied the next morning. Said I'd consider it, as a contractor. No employment, no office, no meetings unless necessary. My hours, my terms. Triple my old rate. They agreed within the day. I walked back into that building 3 weeks later, not through the side door, like an employee, but through the front, badge printed on arrival, visitor sticker on my chest. Max wasn't there. Neither was the nephew. Just a few tense board members and an IT guy who looked relieved to see me. I wasn't there to save them. I was there to extract what was left of the good work I'd once built. They thought I wanted my job back. But what I wanted was never it was the control to decide how much of myself I gave, and to whom. Now I had that. And this time, I'd never hand it over again. The board meeting was held behind closed doors, but word travels fast in companies that are bleeding. First, the nephew, let go effective immediately. No announcement, no farewell post on LinkedIn, just gone. The vendors he alienated had already found new homes. Clients he ignored were never coming back. His learning curve had become a liability. Then Max. He stepped down voluntarily, citing health and family reasons. A generous exit package, I'm sure. But everyone knew it wasn't his idea. The board couldn't justify keeping him after the audit findings. And the audit? That started with the quiet report I'd compiled. Nothing dramatic, just a curated history of missteps, missed warnings, and policy violations. All with dates, signatures, attachments. No emotion, just facts. When they finally asked where I got it all, I said, from the systems I built. The ones no one wanted to understand. There was no need for revenge. I didn't change a single file, didn't touch a single server. They crashed under the weight of their own decisions. I just made sure someone was looking when they did. The end of the month, the company had a new interim CEO. The board asked if I'd stay on longer. I declined. I wasn't angry anymore. Just knew I didn't belong to them or their problems ever again. Justice had already done its job, and I'd already done mine. People ask if I'd ever go back, consult again, maybe even run my own firm in the same space. I tell them no, not because I'm bitter. I'm not. I got what I needed. Clarity, closure, and clean distance. The truth showed up in the end like it always does. It just took time. That lunch, cheap steak, warm bread, the sound of my job slipping away over a casual bite, wasn't what hurt. What hurt was that they thought I was replaceable, that what I built could be inherited by someone who never earned it. Turns out it couldn't. I've since opened a small operation of my own, no investors, no board, just honest work, one project at a time. I make less, but I own it, all of it. Don't miss the old world. I miss nothing about it. They made their decisions and I made mine. This time no one's calling me in for lunch, because no one holds that kind of power over me anymore.